Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We'll get underway quickly with the sponsors and then go on today's. Gemara is not difficult, it's a little long, but it's very interesting because it focuses on a lot of the aspects of mezuzah. Okay, so I think we'll find it, at least from that perspective, quite interesting. Learning sponsors, A Year of Learning by Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. In memory of Malcolm Mann, former member and her family murdered in the Holocaust. Rav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, shall share her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, and Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Charna bas Yeshaya, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi. Month of Learning, Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch. Sorry. B. Pizer, in memory of her father, Yitzchar Dov ben Shmuel. Mordechai and Miriam Burr, in memory of his mother, Manya bas Harav Shimon Halevi. We have also a month of learning by Cheryl Scher, in honor of those who joined her first series of epistemology of tefillah classes. That is it for today. May Shemas have an aliyah, Krank Rafia, Veta Yashir Shem Atzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched Yah.
Amen.
Amen and amen.
All right. If we're starting today on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, about 5 or 6 lines down from the top, right? It's about 6 lines down. Middle of the line.
Tony
Okay.
Rabboni.
Since the Gemara talked about the question of whether only the Lishkat Parhadrin had a mezuzah on it, or whether about the other chambers in the temple, in the Beis HaMikdash, okay? Right. So that leads us to a sidebar, if you will, a discussion on mezuzah. The writer starts off as follows. Tanu Rav Banan says in the pasuk, B'sha'arecha, your gates. Echad sha'arei batim, ve'echad sha'arei chatzerot. The same applies to gatehouses. The same applies to gates of courtyards. Ve'echad sha'arei medinot. And the same applies to different explanations. Medinot here could be provinces. Others want to say it's cities. V'echad sha'arei ayarot. If that's the case, then ayarot here refers to towns as opposed to cities. If you take provinces, then ayarot refers to cities. Okay. Yesh bohem chovat mitzvah lemakom. That there is the obligation of this mitzvah to that place, namely placing it in the appropriate location on the gate.
Rabbi Green, does that apply today also?
Well, That's a good question, Zev. Let's continue with the Gemara and see if it answers that. If
All
not,
right.
then I'll make a suggestion, okay?
Okay.
All right. Shnei Amar. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Uktavtem al mezuzot beitecha uvish'arecha," and you shall write it on the doorposts. I'll use that translation of your house and upon your gates. Amar le Abai, the Rav Safra says, Rav Abai, Hani abule de mechoza. He says those particular city gates of the city of Mechoza. Mai tama lo avdu laho rabbanan mezuzah. What's the reason that the rabbis did not require a mezuzah on those gates? Okay, Amar le, he responded, Rav Safra did, Hinhu chazuk la'akra dechove. So those gates are really supports for the forts of the turrets. In other words, they really weren't per se gates for entrance and exit, but they were simply gates, okay, to go into these turrets. Okay? We all know, I'm sure, what a turret is. Okay, usually on the right. Now, hu da avide, that's why they were made. Amarle, and so Abai responds, ve'ekra dechuve gufa tebaye mezuzah. So I might say, says Abai, that these turrets themselves should require then a mezuzah. Daha it be dira l'shomer bat ha'asuri. Why? Because these serve as residences for those who guard prisoners. Okay? Now, the Gemara continues. That would seem to tell us that the gate, okay, and this is why I held off on answering Zev's question. It would seem to imply that a doorway that is only providing exit and entrance for a residence requires a mezuzah and not otherwise. But let's see if we're right in that supposition. Okay, Zev?
Well, I would think, suppose, there are houses now that have a fence around a small garden.
Right.
In order to get into the house, you have to go through the gate. That gate, according to this, should require a mezuzah.
We'll see. We'll see. Good point. Dahatanya. Why? Because here we're also taught in a Braita, Beit HaKnesset, sheyesh bo Beit Dira lechazan HaKnesset, a synagogue that has a residence for the synagogue attendant. We'll call him whether the shamus or the chazan. Chayevet b'mezuzah, is obligated to have a mezuzah. Ela amar Abai, mishum sakana. But perhaps, says Abai, they don't have a mezuzah on it because of certain dangers, right? What kind of dangers might that be? All right. Okay, Rashi suggests maybe it was involved in witchcraft, but we'll see. Tanya, as taught elsewhere in another Braita, mezuzat yachid nivdeket pa'amayim b'shavua, that the mezuzah of an individual's, okay, is checked twice in 7 years. V'shel rabim, and the mezuzah that belongs to a community. Okay, for example, that would be gates, right? Walls around the city, okay, with gates, pa'amayim b'yovel, twice in a yovel period, 50 years. Va'amar Rabbi Yehuda. And now Rabbi Yehuda is going to tell us a maaseh, okay, the following. Maaseh ba'artavin echad. There was once a situation, an incident with a mezuzah examiner, okay? Shahaya bodek mezuzot b'shuk ha'elyon shel tzipori, and he was examining mezuzahs in the upper marketplace of Sepphoris. Umatzu kasdor echad, and a certain Roman official, like a magistrate, found him. V'natal mimenu elef zuz, and he made him pay the magistrate 1,000 zuz. And so the Gemara asks, V'ha'amar Rabbi Elazar, shluchei mitzvah ein nizukim, but don't we say, according to Rabbi Elazar, that those who are let's say, carrying out a mitzvah should not be harmed, right? So the Gemara answers, Heiche de kavi hezika shani. Okay, but where there's a situation where harm is fixed, in other words, where it could come very easily, that's different. Diktiv, because it's written elsewhere. Okay, in another example, Shmuel Aleph, the story of Eli and his sons. Vayomer Shmuel, Ech elech v'shama Shaul. In this case, he was told by Hashem to go to Saul, right? Vahargeni, how can I go to Saul and he'll kill me? Vayomer Hashem, Eglat bakar tikach biyadecha, va'amarta lizboach l'Hashem bati. You'll go there to the city, and you'll have this animal with you, and you'll say that you came to offer it. Okay. So the implication being that even when Hashem directs you to do something, nevertheless, if it's very clear that it's a situation that's putting your life in danger, okay, we can't assume immediately that some miracle will occur. Now, a new Braita, which is going to give us further details regarding mezuzahs on certain locations. Tani Rav Kahana, Kami de Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana taught the following Braita before Rav Yehuda. Beit HaTeven, a storehouse for straw. Ubeit HaBakar, a barn for cattle. Ubeit HaEtzim, a storehouse for wood. Ubeit HaOtzarot, and any kind of general storehouse that might be used, say, for grain or things like that. Peturim min ha-mezuzah, they're exempt from having a mezuzah. Mipnei shehanashim na'atot bahem, because women, I'm going to use the word, indulge themselves in there. So the Gemara asks, umay na'atot, what do we mean then by this phrase that women indulge themselves there? Okay, what might that refer to? Rochtzot. It means they bathe in those locations. So the Gemara says, it continues, Amar le Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda then, Ta'ama de Rochtzot. That means that the reason that there's no mezuzah is because they bathe there. Hastama, but if it's used for its general purpose, chayavim, it would seem then that they would be required to have mezuzahs. Vahatanya, but on the other hand, we're also taught in the following Braita, Refet Bakar, Petura min ha-mezuzah, a clear cattle barn, let's use the same word, is exempt from a mezuzah. Ella mai na'otot. So therefore, what do we mean when we say that women adorn themselves there? Mitkashtot, that they adorn themselves with makeup, with jewelry, things like that. Vahachi katani, and this is what it means to teach us. Afal pi shehanashim mitkashtot bohem peturim, that even though women may adorn themselves with jewelry, makeup, etc., in those facilities, they are exempt. Now, that seems strange for us, but let's see what the Gemara tells us. Amar le Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana Okay. Therefore responds initially, since he was the one who first said the Braita, V'shehanashim mitkashtot bahen peturin, that women adorn themselves in those manners, that makes them exempt. V'hatanya, but aren't we taught again elsewhere in a Braita? Refet bakar p'tura min hamezuzah, that a cattle house, a barn, is exempt from a mezuzah. V'shehanashim mitkashtot ba chayevet b'mezuzah, and that if women adorn themselves inside of it, that facility would be required to have a mezuzah. Ela ma'it lach lamema. Rather, what then do you have to say? Mitkashtot tana'aihi. That women adorn themselves there is a machloket tanaim. Ledidi nami stama tana'aihi. But according to my view, okay, even such a facility in general is a machloket tanaim. Detanya. Why? Because we have a Braita that teaches as follows. Beitecha, right? Remember our pasuk says that. We saw that earlier, right? That the pasuk said, right? Al mezuzot beitecha uvish'arecha. So beitecha hamiyuchad lach, a house that is unique, particular to you. Prat labeit hateven, that excludes a storehouse for straw. Ulabeit habakar, or a barn for cattle. Ulabeit ha'etzim, or a storehouse for wood. Ulabeit ha'otzarot, or a general storehouse. Shet pturin min mezuzah, that they are exempt from a mezuzah. V'yesh mechayvin, and there are those, however, who obligate it. So the Gemara continues, Be'emet amru, that indeed, in truth, this is what they were saying. Beit hakise, a privy, ubeit haburske, and a tannery, ubeit hamerchatz, and a public bath, ubeit hatvila, and a public mikvah, v'shehanashim na'atot bahen, and that women bathe or adorn themselves in them, Peturin min hamezuzah, they are exempt from a mezuzah. Rav Kahana mataretz latame. Rav Kahana explained according to his view. The Rav Yehuda mataretz latame, and Rav Yehuda explained it according to his view. Rav Kahana mataretz latame. Rav Kahana explained it according to his view. Beitecha, when it says in the pasuk, your house, Beitcha hamiyuchad lach, it's the house that is particular to you. Prat lebeit hateven, ulebeit habakar, ulebeit ha'etzim, ulebeit ha'otzarot. That excludes a storehouse for straw, a cattle store barn, or a storehouse for wood, or a general storehouse. Shepturim min hamezuzah bistam, that they are exempt from a mezuzah in general. V'yesh shemechayvin bistam, and there are those who obligate it in a general use. Be'emet amru, but indeed, in truth, what they were saying was Beit hakisei, the privy, ubeit haburske, and the tannery, ubeit hamerchatz, and a public bathhouse, ubeit hatvila, and a public immersion house, a mikvah, v'shehanashim na'otot bahem, and women adorn themselves, either jewelry, makeup, etc., etc. Uma'i na'otot, and what do we mean then by adorn? Rochtzot, that they bathe there. Peturin min hamezuzah, it's exempt from a mezuzah. Ihachi.
What do we do with our indoor plumbing?
Oh, hold on. We'll see. Ihachi. If that's the case, says the Gemara, Hainu merchatz. Isn't that the same as a Beit merchatz, as a public bath? There's your indoor plumbing. Ashma'inen merchatz de rabim, va'ashma'inen merchatz de yachid. Okay, I learn on the one hand, a public bathhouse is precisely public use. I learn also merchatz de yachid. I learned there that that's a bath for private use. The salka da'atcha, because it's possible, Amina, I might have said, merchatz de rabim, where there is a public bath, de nafish zuhame, that there's more filth there. Aval merchatz de yachid, de lo nafish zuhame, but as a private bath, where there is not more filth, ema lechayev b'mezuzah. I might have then said that there one has to require a mezuzah. Kamash malan comes to teach us that that's not the case. Now, Gemara flips to the other side of the discussion. V'Rav Yehuda b'taretz l'tameh. And Rav Yehuda explained it according to his perspective. Hachi katani, this is what it teaches. Beitcha, in the pasuk where it says your house, Beitcha hamiyuchad lach, that's your house that is particular to you. Prat lebeit hateven ubeit habakar ubeit ha'etzim ubeit ha'otzrot. That excludes a storehouse for straw, a cattle barn, a storehouse for wood, or a general storehouse, shepturim min hamezuzah, afilu mitkashtot, even where, okay, women might put makeup on or jewelry. V'yesh mechayvin b'mitkashtot, but there are those who require such facilities even when used for women's adorning. Aval stam divrei hakol patur. But in general, everybody agrees that these places are exempt. Be'emet amru, what indeed, in truth, what they were saying, Beit hakisei, ubeit haborskei, ubeit hamerchatz, ubeit hatfilah. Again, a privy, a tannery, a public bath, mikvah, public mikvah, afal pi shehanashim mitkashtot bahem, even though women adorn themselves there, peturin min hamezuzah mishum denafi shezuhame, are exempt from a mezuzah because there's more, if you will, filth there. Ula Rav Yehuda, stama divrei hakol patur, asks the Gemara, and according to Rav Yehuda, in general, would we say that everybody agrees then that these places are exempt? Vahatanya, but isn't it taught also in a Braita? Bisha'arecha, in your gates. Echad sha'arei batim, the same applies to gates for gatehouses. Ve'echad sha'arei chatzerot, and the same applies for gates to courtyards. Ve'echad sha'arei medinot, and the same applies to gates for either provinces or cities. Ve'echad sha'arei ayarot, and the same applies to gates for either cities or towns. Verefet, but a barn, velulin, or a chicken coop, umadvan, or a small storage area for straw, va'otzrot yayin, or a wine cellar, let's say, a wine room, wine house, va'otzrot shemen, or a storehouse for oil. Okay? Chayavin v'mezuzah, those would require a mezuzah. Yechol shani marbeh. Okay, It's possible then, says Rabbi Yehuda, that I might even include, he says, as we go over to the next Amud, Af Beit Shar, Achsadra. Maybe I would include even the gatehouse for a portico, Umer Peset, or the gatehouse that leads to a porch. Talmud Lomar, Bayit. But our pasuk said a house. Ma bayit miyuchad ladira, the same way that a house is particular for residence. Yatsu elu she'ein miyuchadim ladira. We exclude all of those that are not unique, appointed, let's say, as a dwelling. Now, Gemara is going to continue and give us some other discussion. Yachol she'ani marbeh af beit hakisei, ubeit haburski, ubeit hamerchatz, ubeit hatfilah. I might then have thought to include the privy and the tannery and the public bath and the public mikvah. Talmud Lomar bayit, but the text said house. Ma bayit ha'asui lechavod, the same way that a house is designated for a certain amount of respect, of honor, of dignity. Afkol ha'asui lekavod. So other things that are made for respect, dignity, honor. Yatsu elu she'ein asuyim lekavod. Exclude those things then that are not made for dignity, honor, etc. Another example. Yachol she'ani marbeh af har habayit. It's possible that I might have then included the Temple Mount, the entire Azara, Vahalishkot, Vaha'azarot, and all the chambers, and all of the courtyards, temple areas. Okay? If you're using Art Scroll, okay, we have a couple of diagrams, okay, that would point to various places. In the, you have the Ezras Nashim, for example, or other galleries or other places, right? Okay. What happens? Talmud Lomar Bayit. Again, we say house. Ma Bayit Shahu Chol. The same way that a house is unconsecrated. In other words, it's common use, okay, is that. Afkol Shahu Chol. So likewise, that which is commonly used for non-sacred purposes, Yatsu Elu She'ehen Kodesh. That excludes those that are Kodesh, that are sanctified, right? Tiyufta, and therefore that is a proof text, a refutation. Okay, now we're still going to continue now with this discussion about mezuzah, but we move slightly to a new aspect.
I haven't answered my question.
I didn't answer your question.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so the question is a guardhouse.
If I have a house with a small garden in front and then a gate around it, you have to come in through the gate. Does the
Correct.
gate require mezuzah?
The gate, does the gate require? We're not done with the Gemara yet, Zev.
Well,
Let's see what
okay,
it says.
Thought you were finished with that topic.
Right, but we're going to get to other situations.
All
We'll
right.
see if it brings it. Okay? All right. Tommy, let's teach the following Mishnah. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Kame de Rava. He taught the following. Okay? Shisha Sha'arim Peturim Min HaMezuzah. There are 6 gates that are exempt from a mezuzah. Let's see if Zev's garden gate is exempt. Bait HaTeven. Again, it's a straw shed, right? Ubeit HaBakar. And again, a barn for cows. Ubeit ha'etzim, the wood house. Ubeit ha'otzrot, okay, and the general storehouse. V'shar hamadai, okay. This is going to be considered a Median, arched or domed entranceway, okay. V'shar she'eno mikora, okay, and a gateway that really does not have any beams. It's a gateway without a roof, okay. V'shar she'eno gavoa asara, and a gateway that is, all right, that it doesn't reach a height of at least 10 handbreadths. Okay. So if you have a garden and you have a gate, it's a low fence, right? One of those nice little picket fences, okay, Zev? With
Yes.
a little gate there, and the height is less than 10 tfachim. What's your answer? No, you don't need a mezuzah on that gate.
I thought where it says roofless, that might be applicable
That
too.
would also be. It depends on the kind of, right? All right. Okay, so though we have two options to answer your question then, okay? It could also have been an arched entranceway, okay? I remember once in one home that I lived in, between the living room and the dining room, it wasn't a two mezuzah and a cross beam, it was arched, okay? So there are situations like that, even inside a house. Okay? Now, so the Gemara now tells us the following. Okay? Amart le pitacht b'shisha v'salakt b'shiva. You began by saying there were 6, and then you finished with 7. Amar le, he responded, Shar hamadi t'na'ahi, that the issue of a arched gateway or a domed gateway. Okay? I tend to think arched gives us a better example. Koren, I don't know if Art Scroll, I didn't have it, has a picture. Koren does have a picture of an arched, okay? And if you look at the Gemara, okay, regular daf, okay, you can see on the left side, opposite Rashi's Rabbi Meir Savar, okay, you can see a picture of an arched, okay, example, okay. All right, so now.
Art Scroll has it on 11b2.
Oh, okay, thank you for telling us, okay. So he says kippah, if it's arched, if it's a dome, Rabbi Meir mechayev b'mezuzah. So that's why we see that the drawing is right there, okay, referring to me, right? Okay, and we'll see why momentarily. V'chachamim potrin, but the sage is exempt. V'shavim, but they do agree. She'im yesh beragla asara shechayevet b'mezuzah, that if the height of the arch, okay, is such that the legs reach up and they're at least 10 tfachim, then it does require the mezuzah. Now, Amar Abaye says, Abaye, the kuli alma gvoha asara ve'ein beragla shlosha v'lav klum hi. So Abaye challenges this as saying, but even if everybody agrees that the height of such an arched gate is 10 tfachim, but if it doesn't have, right, feet of at least 3 tfachim, right, or really 3 amma, okay, then it's nothing. Inami, or also, yesh beragla shlosha, that we have 3, ve'ina gvoa asara. Okay, but it's not a height of 10. V'lav klum hi. There too, then, it's nothing. Okay? But if the post, again, we're saying, is not, so we have this double standard. Okay? Lo nechlaku ela begov asara v'yesh beragla shlosha. So saying the argument was only such where this arched gateway, okay, reached a height of 10 handbreadths, okay, and it also had, okay, at least 3, okay, in height, okay. V'ein berachava arba, but it's not with 4. V'yesh ba lachuk v'hashlima la'arba'ah. So the Gemara now raises another interesting point here. It says, and there is the possibility to carve out, in other words, not necessarily physically carve out, but at least theoretically, instead of figuring it as an arch, okay, think of it as being straight up and then across even, like a normal doorway, as opposed to up and curved. Okay? All right? So that's what it means. Rabbi Meir Savar, Chokakim Lahashlim. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that we do theoretically carve it out to fill it, to make it like a doorway straight across. And therefore, sorry, that's why he requires the mezuzah.
Right.
Rabbanan Savre Ein Chokukim Lahashlim. And the rabbis understand that one does not have to theoretically carve it out.
Definitely important.
Okay, let's go on now. A new Braita, Tanu Rabbanan, Beit HaKnesset. Okay. So we're talking now about a synagogue. Ubeit HaIsha, and a house owned by a woman. Ubeit HaShutafim, and a house owned by joint partners. Chayevet b'mezuzah, says this Braita. They're all obligated to have a mezuzah. Pshita, mahu detema. This seems obvious, says the Gemara. So what's the issue here? What are you trying to say? Well, the pasuk said, Beitecha, your house. Velo beita, in other words, and not maybe her house. Beitcha, your house. Velo batehem, and not their house. Kamash malan comes to teach us, however, that's not the case, and that those locations do need a mezuzah. Ve'ema hachanami. And I would say here too, what about the fact that I can say a pasuk, a markra, L'ma'an yirbu yemechem v'bnei bnechem, in order to lengthen the day, your days, in the days of your progeny. Hani ba'u chaye, v'hani lo ba'u chaye. Are we saying that these want lengthy days and these don't want lengthy days?
Very good. So about 1:30?
Beitcha, but rather your house.
I'm sorry?
Really?
Yes.
What does it mean, your house?
Okay, see you later. 1:30. Okay.
Okay. What does it mean, your house? Kidarabba, as Rabba suggests the following. Anta Amar Rabba, who says, Derech bi'atcha, by the way you go in. Okay. Namely, B'chi akar inish kar e diamina, as it would be that a person lifts up and puts their right foot first. Akar beresha, that's what goes in first. Okay, so that would tell us, no, that the mezuzah goes on the right side of the end as you walk into this doorway. Tanya idach, but we have another brighter. Sorry, that says as follows: Beit HaKnesset, a synagogue, Ubeit HaShutafim, a house jointly owned, Ubeit HaIsha, and the house that belongs to a woman, Mitam'im B'Nigaim. They are capable of all becoming Tameh, okay, with Tzarat, with some sort of house Tzarat. Pshita. Again, that's obvious. Mahu Detema.
Why
What
not?
are we saying here? Based on the pasuk, Uba asher lo habayit. The pasuk says, and that which comes, right, to him, the house. Lo, to him, velo la, and not to her. Lo to him, velo lahem, and not to them. Kamash malan comes to teach us then. That's not the case. We don't derive it that way. And therefore, these places are susceptible to Tuma, right? Ve'ema hachanami. And I would say here too, Amar Kra, V'bayit eretz achuzatchem. It says in a house in the land of your portion. Elelo mamali. So what's the purpose? Mi shemiyached beito lo. That is his house particular to him. She'eno rotzeh lahash'il kelav, implying that he's a person who is not willing to loan out his utensils. V'omer she'en lo. Why? Because he says, I don't have the utensils. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mefarsamo, okay, k'shemafne et beito, that the Holy One, blessed be He, will make it known. Okay, why? In other words, make it known whether or not he has such utensils, really. Why? Because if the house is struck with tsarat, what does he have to do? First thing is
Everything else.
empty it out. K'shemafne et beito, prat lemash'il kelav la'acherim. He has to empty
found
it out. And that excludes someone who is willing to loan his items to others. So we get further discussion on this statement. Ubeit Knesset, and as far as a synagogue goes, mi metame b'nigaim, is it possible that it can become tame with tzarat? V'hatanya, aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Yechol yiyu batei knesiot ubatei midrashot metaim b'nigaim. Is it possible to say that synagogues and houses of study can become tameh with nigaim, with tzarat? Talmud lomar, a pasuk tells us, uba asher lo habayit, that it comes to one it's his house. Mi shemiyuchad lo, that it belongs to him. Yatzu ela she'en miyuchadim lo. That should include those locations that are not particular or unique to that person. Lo kasha. That's not a problem. Ha Rabbi Meir, ha Rabbanan. In one case, it could be Rabbi Meir's view, in the other, the rabbis. The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in another Braita, Beit HaKnesset, sheyesh ba Beit Dira b'chazan HaKnesset, chayav b'mezuzah, that a synagogue that has a place of residence for the attendant, for the servant, must have a mezuzah. V'she'ein ba Beit Dira, and if it doesn't have a place of residence, Rabbi Meir mechayev, Rabbi Meir says it still requires mezuzah, v'chachamim potrin, and the sages exempt. V'ibayit ema. But if you want, I would say as follows: Havaha Rabbanan. In both cases, we could say it refers to the rabbis. Velo kasha, and there's no problem here. Why? Ha, the itba beit dira. In one case, it's a synagogue that has a residence. Ha delit beit dira. And in another case, it could be a synagogue that does not have a residence. Okay, right here in Century Village, we've got that. All right, Torah Or has no place for a custodian or somebody to live in, but Beth Shalom does. Okay,
Really?
V'ivayatema. And if you want, I might say, ha vaha, delete ba beit dira. Both in this case and in this case, maybe it's a situation where the synagogue does not have a residence. We're going to go over a little bit. All right. Why? On the top of Yud Bet Amud Aleph, Vaha de Krachim, because one are those in cities, Vaha de Kfarim, and one of those in villages. Ude Krachim ein metame benegaim. And do we say that synagogues in large cities are not possible to become tameh, right, from whatever? Vahatanya, because isn't it taught in the Braita, achuzatchem, your property, your possession. Achuzatchem metama benegaim, that your possession can become susceptible, let's say, to tzaraat, leprosy, whatever. Ve'ein Yerushalayim mitam'a benegaim. But Jerusalem, well, it was the place of the Beis Hamikdash, cannot become tamei. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, ani lo shamati ela makom mikdash bilvad. Rabbi Yehuda says, I only learned, okay, that it's sacred places that are not subject to surat, right, to whatever. Ha, batei knesiot ubatei midrashot metam'in benegaim. This would seem, therefore, to say, okay, that synagogues and houses of study are capable of becoming tameh. Ve'afalgav the krachim minhu, even though they might be located in large cities. Ema, and therefore I say, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ani lo shamati, I did not learn, except ela makom mikudash bilvad, only in a holy place. In other words, only in the area of the Beis Hamikdash. So we're going to stop there today. We'll pick up tomorrow, okay, when we're going to deal with a little bit more of the location of the Beit HaMikdash and discussion of still what's this business with synagogues of cities versus villages. Okay. So we'll, as I say, stop there. Wish everybody a good day, a healthy day, and stay well.